Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer. You know, ladies and gentlemen, Botox used to be a very controversial subject, but today, nobody raises an eyebrow. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Tyrants of the Underdark from Gale Force Nine. In Tyrants of the Underdark, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of various leaders of drow houses in this Dungeons & Dragons epic adventure. The game board is a map of the Underdark with various locations connected to other locations, and it is divided up into 3 sections. Depending on player count, you're going to use just some or all of those sections. Now on the board you have various locations within the locations to place tokens. You're going to go ahead and kind of seed the board with a various number of kind of neutral faction tokens that you're going to have to fight in order to gain control of those locations. Now there are a number of mini decks or half decks that have all sorts of different characters and monsters and different things going on, and what you're going to do is you're just going to take 2 of those half decks for any given game, mix them together, and that is kind of the deck you're going to draw from. That's right, this is a deck building game. You're going to go ahead and then put out all of the cards in a market where you can buy for them. There's also some kind of standard weaker cards there you can buy from as long as they're in stock, and a few other little goodies. Each player is also going to have their own little player board, which is going to have kind of have their actions on it, tell them what their actions are, but it's also going to have space on the sides for your draw deck and your discard pile, as well as the various faction tokens you are going to place on the board and any that you have destroyed of your enemies. Your starting deck consists of 7 noble cards, which are kind of currency in the game, and then you have 3 soldier cards, which kind of have power and attack abilities in the game. You're going to go ahead, shuffle your deck, and draw 5 starting cards. Now, every card has various information on it. It's, of course, got its name. It's got the cost to purchase that card. It's got any special abilities that that card does. It'll also have a couple of victory point totals at the bottom. Essentially, if that card is in your draw deck or in your hand or in your discard pile at the end of the game, it's worth a lesser number. But if you have essentially banked that card, it is worth the higher victory point total at the end of the game. Now, the basic currencies in the game are power, which is kind of, as I say, kind of your ability to attack and to kind of, do things on the board. And then, of course, you have influence, which is kind of your currency for actually buying more cards. Now, on your turn, you're going to play your cards, and that's going to give you the various currencies that then you can act with. For instance, if you have 1 power, you can deploy one of your tokens on the board, provided it is adjacent to another token that you have. If you have 3 or more tokens, you can actually assassinate somebody else's token, taking it off the board. You can also recruit any cards, as I say, by expending your influence to buy them. And then if you have 3 power, you can also go ahead and return a spy from the board to your spy pool. More on that later. Now, as I say, there's various troop spaces along the board. There's troop spaces along the pathways, and then there's troop spaces in the locations. And again, you can only deploy to where you have adjacency. But if you're in a specific location, you can go ahead and try to dominate it by essentially having the most of your color. That means you have more than the neutrals or more than any of the enemy players. For instance, if there's 4 spaces and there's a black troop which belongs to somebody, a white troop which is neutral, but you have 2 of your colored troops there, then you would claim that space. Now, there are certain locations, certain sites on the board that give you tokens, and if you have these tokens, if you can just control them, you kind of get the basic level. If you, I think, have total control over them, meaning you have everything in that space, you flip it over so that you have even more advantages that come from that token you've got. And these things will reward you with victory points. So every time on your turn, you can just grab a victory point token. And that's going to be very important to you heading toward the end of the game, the longer you can hold those spaces that give you those kinds of tokens. Now, as I say, you can only deploy when you are adjacent, when you have adjacency. But you can also, through some of the card play, you can deploy spies. You only have, I think, 5 spies or a limited number of spies, and you can place them pretty much anywhere on the board. But the thing about the spies is it gives you adjacency. So if you have a spy in a location, you can use that to go ahead and try to insert your own troops there to deny somebody total control or even their control, but importantly to branch out and kind of create a new area from which you can deploy troops. Now, the various cards you buy are going to interact with the troops on the board in different ways, and depending on locations and different factors, they're going to allow you to do fun and interesting things throughout the game. Now, whenever you destroy an enemy troop, you claim one of their troop tokens and you put it next to your player aid, and that's going to be worth some points at the end of the game. Now, the game ends in one of 2 ways. You trigger the end game if ever one player runs out of their tokens, they've deployed them all or had them killed, you finish the round, and then you go to scoring. Or if the market deck runs out of cards, you finish the round, and then you go to scoring. Now, there's several different factors that are going to go into scoring. First of all, you gain a VP for every site that you control, and you gain 2 VP for every site that you have total control of. You also get 1 VP for every trophy, that's every enemy that you've killed that's in front of you. You also get as I said, the lower number VP total for every card you have in your hand, deck, or discard pile. You get the larger number if you have put that in your inner circle, which again essentially is banking your card, and some of the card effects let you do that throughout the game. Finally, you look at any victory point tokens that you have accrued during the game. You add all of these things together, and whoever has the most victory points wins. Tyrants of the Underdark. So, Tyrants of the Underdark is a game that came out several years ago originally. It was a bigger box. It was a bigger production. It had minis. I remember, though, there were some problems because I think when they made the expansion for it, the expansion cards didn't match. They didn't mesh with the cards in the base deck. That's what I've heard. I didn't have any experience with it. And what's cool about this edition is it's a smaller box, so it's got less of a footprint on your shelf, which is always good. You don't have the minis, you just have the tokens. But critically, it's got the expansion integrated into this box here. So that's pretty cool that you're getting that content here as well. I had never played the original Tyrants of the Underdark. I'd always wanted to. It was one that was always on my radar. I know my friend Chris in Texas, he had a copy of it. We kept saying we were going to play it. We just never got around to it. But I always wanted to play it because I always like games that are deck builders that you translate the deck building to the board. I always find that to be a lot of fun. I love games that are board games that find ways to implement deck building. Dune Imperium was a great worker placement game that does it recently. I think Few Acres of Snow may have been the first one that did that, if I recall correctly. Clank does a good job with it. But the integration of deck building into more of a traditional board game is something I really enjoy. It's a lot of fun. So I was really looking forward to this one. But I just never got around to it. And recently, the good people at Gale Force 9 sent me this copy. And I was really excited to finally sit down and play it. And I think it looks great. I don't miss the minis. I think the tokens are fine. And I think the artwork, of course, it's Dungeons and Dragons artwork. It's great. It does a good job of taking you into the theme. I got to be honest, I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons guy, so I don't really know anything about the Drow houses or any of the lore, the mythos here. So I just kind of played it for what it was. But I still was able to get a kind of a fun, creepy sense of the theme here with this game. Fundamentally, this is an area control game. It's a game about taking over and holding certain spaces while trying to expand, while trying to defend what you've got. And of course, like any deck builder game, there's a good amount of luck here. What cards come out, what cards you can afford. And there's that moment where you're looking at the market and they're looking at the market, but you're able to get the card that you both want. And there's ways, of course, to deny your opponent the ability to do certain things if the cards work out a certain way. And that's always fun, and I always like that. And this is a game too that's not very long. It's like an hour, I think, maybe a little bit more with more players. And I've only played it as a 2-player. I think if this game were 3 hours, it would wear out its welcome pretty quick. but where it's not that long, I think it's a perfect length for the experience it provides. And I got to tell you, I really liked it. I really had fun with this game. It was just a smart, fun deck builder that had some great battles for locations and some tough choices with what do you want to buy, or do I deploy here, or do I try to assassinate a guy, or what order should I do these things in. So it gave a really fun, it provided a really fun experience for me and my friend McKay when we played it, and I was super excited. I was super excited to finally get the chance to play it, and then I was very excited to find out it lived up to what I had hoped it would be in my mind. One of the other things I really, really like about this game is it has got the banking of your cards, the inner circle. You can put the cards in the inner circle. Now, years ago I played, I can't even think of it, Temple of the Lost Pharaoh. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was the Egyptian one from AEG that came out, and they did like a bigger deluxe version a few years ago, and I didn't say that. I just played the original when it came out. And one of the things I liked most about that was it had the ability to bank cards. Essentially, you can have this card that can do great things as long as it's in play, or you can take it out of play and it'll be worth more at the end of the game. And that's a great decision. Do I want to keep this card in play, or do I want to bank it? And again, it's just it's a fun part of this game that I really liked, and it's fun to play it at the end of the game and see how much those cards are worth when you bank them versus when you kept them in your hand. Fun part of the game. Anyway, really like Tyrants of the Underdark. Really like this edition, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD. We talk about military history and fun things like that. And I'd ask you to please give a like to this, to give a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. That helps us out a lot as well. You know, ladies and gentlemen, recently my drummer quit our band, and then he came back. There's going to be repercussions.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
As you can, I think we're screwed, you guys.
No,